You don't have to agree with what happened in order to accept that it did. That might sound strange at first, especially when your heart is aching and your mind keeps running circles around the same questions. Why did they leave? Why didn't they fight for me? How could they just move on? But acceptance isn't about saying it was okay. It's not about making sense of it or finding some polished, rational explanation. It's about finally admitting to yourself, this happened, and I don't have to keep living inside of it anymore. We hold on because we think there's something left to fix, some closure we didn't get, some part of the story that didn't play out the way it should have. But closure isn't something someone gives you. It's something you choose when you stop waiting for the story to make sense. Because honestly, some things won't. Some people leave without a reason that will ever satisfy your heart. Some people don't grow. Some people love you in the only way they know how, and that way still isn't enough. And that has to be okay, because if you don't let it be okay, you'll never be free. When we confuse acceptance with agreement, we end up stuck. We think, if I accept that they hurt me, it means they were right to do it. Or if I stop fighting this, then I'm giving up on what we had. But the truth is the opposite. When you accept that someone let you go, you're not agreeing with their choice. You're choosing not to let their decision define you anymore. You're not saying they were right. You're saying, even if they were wrong, I'm done reliving the same pain. I'm done arguing with reality. I'm done waiting for a different ending. There's a quiet kind of power that comes when you stop needing the apology. When you stop waiting for them to realize your worth. When you stop hoping they'll turn around. That power doesn't come overnight. It builds slowly, first, in the silence after you delete the last message you wanted to send. Then, in the moment you sit in your room crying but don't reach out. Then again, in the quiet pride that comes when you finally go a whole day without thinking about them. Acceptance is the moment you realize you've survived something you thought would destroy you. It's not a celebration, it's not a relief right away. Sometimes it's just an exhausted whisper of truth. It's over. And that truth can hurt, but it's honest, and honest is what heals. You don't accept it because it feels good. You accept it because resisting it is exhausting. You accept it because trying to force meaning out of someone who stopped showing up for you is a slow form of self-destruction. You accept it because your life is waiting on the other side of this heartbreak, and it cannot begin until you put this chapter down. There's no perfect goodbye, no right way to unlove someone. Sometimes the ending is messy. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes they didn't even know they broke your heart. But that doesn't mean it didn't matter. That doesn't mean you weren't deeply affected. That doesn't mean your feelings were wrong. And it definitely doesn't mean you're weak for struggling to move on. The hardest part is when your memories try to convince you to romanticize what you lost. You remember the good days, the laughs, the plans. You remember who you were when you were with them, and you grieve not just the relationship, but the version of yourself that only existed in their presence. That's real, that's valid, but you're still whole even without them. You're still lovable, still valuable, still capable of an even deeper love with someone who doesn't just spark your heart but protects it. Acceptance says, I choose peace over clarity. I choose my future over my history. I choose to honor what we had without letting it hold me hostage. So no, you don't need to agree with how it ended. You don't have to justify their choices. You don't even have to understand them. You just need to say, this was real. It shaped me, but it does not own me anymore. That's liberation. That's when the healing finally begins. Letting go is not a betrayal of the love you gave. It's a commitment to the love you still deserve. And in this moment, even if your heart still aches, you are one breath closer to being free. There's a story you've been telling yourself, maybe not out loud, maybe not even to your closest friends, but it's there, in the quiet moments, in the spaces between conversations, in the way your chest tightens when someone mentions their name. It's the story of why it ended, what you could have done differently, why they stopped choosing you, and it loops in your head like a broken song. If I was just a little more patient, if I didn't say that thing, maybe they'd still be here. But here's what you need to hear. The story you're repeating isn't truth. It's grief talking. It's regret filtered through emotion. And until you rewrite that narrative, it's going to keep writing you. When something ends and we don't fully understand why, our brains do what they were designed to do. They fill in the blanks. They create a version of the story where we were too much or not enough, or just one step away from being loved properly. But that version of the story often erases the facts that don't match our pain. We forget how often we were confused, how often our needs went unmet, how long we tried to make excuses for their silence. We remember the warmth of their touch, but forget the coldness in their withdrawal. We highlight the best moments and skip over the patterns that broke us. But healing doesn't come from erasing the good times. It comes from telling the whole story, the honest story. You have to be willing to look at it all, not just the highlight reel. You have to be brave enough to sit with the version of you who gave your best and still wasn't met. You have to stop making it your fault that they didn't know how to love you in the way you needed. Because the story you're repeating in your head might sound like, I wasn't enough. But the truth might be they weren't ready, they weren't capable, they didn't see me clearly, or worse, they saw me, and still didn't show up. That's a hard truth, but it's a freeing one, because once you rewrite that story, it stops holding you hostage. You stop being the villain in your own narrative. You stop living in the past version of yourself that was desperate to prove you were lovable, and you begin to understand that your worth was never up for debate. You were always enough, it just wasn't the right match. And if you've ever told yourself, but we had so much potential, I want you to pause and ask, potential for what? A future where your needs are continually negotiated. A relationship that only works when you're shrinking yourself to maintain peace. Love is not a project. You weren't supposed to be the one who fixed it. You were supposed to be in it, fully, safely, and equally. So here's the invitation. Take back the pen. Stop letting your past write your present. Stop letting someone else's inability to show up become the blueprint for how you see yourself. Start telling the story differently. Not from a place of blame, but from a place of power. Instead of, they left because I was too emotional, say, they couldn't hold space for the depth of what I feel, and that's not a flaw in me. Instead of, they got bored because I wasn't interesting enough. Say, they were chasing novelty, not connection, and I want someone who values substance over stimulation. Instead of, I lost the best thing I ever had, say, I'm learning what real love should look like, and this was a part of that lesson, not the final chapter. When you tell the story like that, something starts to shift inside you, your shoulders relax, your heart starts to soften, not toward them, but toward yourself, and you begin to realize, maybe for the first time, that this pain was never proof of your failure. It was an initiation, a doorway, a wake-up call. And now, with everything you've learned, you are becoming someone who no longer begs for crumbs when they were always worthy of the feast. The story you tell yourself matters. It sets the tone for what you'll allow in the future. It becomes the filter through which you see every new opportunity, every new person, every new version of yourself. So if you keep telling the story that ends with "I wasn't chosen," you'll keep acting like someone who doesn't deserve to be. But if you start telling the story where you are the one who grew, who faced their truth, who chose to heal even when it hurt, you step into your power. You become the hero of your own life, and no matter what they took from you, they didn't take that. You get to choose now, you get to rewrite it, you get to rise. There's a moment, usually quiet, often overlooked, where you realize just how much of yourself you handed over to someone who no longer holds space in your life. It's not always dramatic, it's not always loud, but it's there, in the way you still check your phone at night, hoping their name appears, in the way you hold back in new conversations, afraid of giving too much too fast again. It's in the pause between moving forward and still being emotionally tied to someone who already moved on. That's the power you gave away, and now it's time to take it back, because whether you meant to or not, you made someone else the gatekeeper of your peace, of your confidence, of your worth. You allowed their validation to become your fuel. You let their affection be the evidence that you mattered, and when they withdrew, so did your sense of identity. That's not weakness. That's what love sometimes does. It makes us soft, vulnerable, open. But what you have to understand now is that while love is beautiful, love without boundaries is where you start to lose yourself, and I know it hurts to admit that. Because maybe for a while, giving them that power felt good, it felt safe, you trusted them with the fragile parts of you, you thought they'd hold it gently, but not everyone you give your heart to knows what to do with it. And when they leave, or change, or stop showing up, it's easy to think you've been robbed, but the truth is, you didn't lose your power, they just carried it for a while, and now it's time for you to reclaim it. Reclaiming your power isn't about pretending you don't care. It's not about becoming cold or emotionally unavailable. It's about recognizing that someone else's choices don't get to dictate your value. It's about waking up and saying, just because they stopped seeing me doesn't mean I disappear. Your worth is not on hold waiting for someone to come back. It's not buried in their memory of you. It's right here, right now, in how you speak to yourself, in how you hold your own heart, in how you show up even when it feels like you're crawling through grief. You have to get honest. Ask yourself, where did I give myself away? Did I lower my standards to keep them comfortable? Did I stay silent when I wanted to speak? Did I shrink to avoid confrontation? Did I let them decide how much love I was allowed to receive? Those answers will hurt, but they will also free you, because you can't reclaim what you don't acknowledge you gave up. And here's what's important. Just because you gave your power away doesn't mean you're broken. It means you cared deeply, you showed up fully, you gave love the way you knew how, and that's not something to be ashamed of. That's something to be proud of. But the next chapter of your story doesn't require you to keep reliving the moment you lost yourself. It asks you to step back into your own strength. And not the strength that looks tough on the outside, but the kind that says, even if they couldn't choose me, I can still choose myself. Every time you say no to going back to something that hurt you, you reclaim power. Every time you unfollow for your peace, every time you don't answer that message at midnight, every time you choose not to analyze what they're doing or who they're with, you take a piece of yourself back. And every time you show up for your life without needing them to witness it, you rebuild the version of you that they couldn't hold. Power isn't loud, it's quiet, it's in your decisions, it's in the discipline to protect your energy. It's in not romanticizing someone who gave you more pain than peace, and it's in remembering that the way someone treats you says more about them than it ever did about you. You didn't fail because they didn't stay. You're not unworthy because they stopped showing up. Sometimes people leave because they're not ready for what you offer. Sometimes they leave because they don't know how to meet you at the level you were showing up at. And sometimes they leave because they never planned to stay. That doesn't make you foolish, it makes you human. But being human doesn't mean you have to keep giving yourself away. You can choose to keep the parts of you that are kind, generous, loving, but now pair them with boundaries. With self-respect, with clarity. You don't have to close your heart, but you do have to close the door on the people who made you doubt your worth. So today, even if it's hard, even if you still miss them, choose power. Choose yourself, not because it's easy, but because it's the only way forward, because you don't belong in the shadows of someone else's indecision. You belong in the light of your own becoming, and you're not waiting for that anymore. You're rising into it. There comes a time when thinking, processing, and understanding are no longer enough. Your mind has replayed every moment, your heart has examined every conversation, and still, there's a part of you tethered to someone who no longer stands beside you. You wake up hoping the ache has faded, but it hasn't. You smile in public but still flinch when you hear their name. That's when you realize this isn't about logic anymore. It's about energy, emotion. And it's time to release them, not just physically, but energetically, emotionally, spiritually. That's what the emotional disconnection ritual is for. This isn't a quick fix. It's not a gimmick or a one-day event. It's a sacred declaration to yourself. I choose me now. It's not about forgetting what you had. It's about releasing what is no longer yours to carry. It's about freeing the version of you who's been trapped in yesterday so the real you can finally breathe in the now. Start by making space physically and emotionally. You can't create sacred release in a cluttered mind or a distracted heart. Sit down somewhere quiet. Light a candle if you need to, or open a window to let the wind remind you how nature lets go without resistance. This is your space, your time, no interruptions, just you and the truth. Close your eyes and call them forward, not literally but energetically. Bring their face to mind, picture their presence, and speak to them. Say what you've held inside for too long, not out of anger but from truth. I loved you, I hoped for us, I tried, I gave, I waited, I hurt. Let the words flow, even the ones that scare you. Because this ritual isn't about crafting perfect sentences. It's about bleeding out what's been poisoning your peace. The unsaid words, the tears you silenced, the forgiveness you withheld from yourself. Then say the one thing your soul has been aching to hear from you. But I release you now, and mean it, even if it hurts, especially if it hurts. Release them not because they deserve it. Release them because you deserve your life back. You deserve mornings that aren't haunted by memories, nights that aren't visited by questions. You deserve to feel clean again, emotionally clean, without residue or replay. Take a deep breath and imagine the energetic cord between you and them. That invisible tie that connects you through history, memory, pain, and longing. See it clearly. Feel where it's attached in your body. Your chest, your stomach, maybe your throat, and now imagine cutting it. Gently, deliberately, not in hatred, but in love. I no longer hold on to what isn't holding me. Say it out loud if you need to. Whisper it if your voice shakes, but let the cord fall. If you feel grief rise up, don't fight it. That's the cost of liberation, grief. It doesn't mean you made a mistake. It means your heart is releasing what it once thought was permanent. Let the tears come. Let the silence hold you. Let your body speak in the ways it never got to when you were trying to stay strong. You may need to do this more than once. That's okay. Emotional disconnection isn't always instant. It's a process, a promise, a practice, and each time you return to the ritual, you're choosing yourself again. Each time the cord gets thinner, the ache gets lighter, your peace gets louder. After the ritual, don't rush to fill the space. Let the emptiness be sacred. This is not a void to be patched. It's a space you've reclaimed. A clearing for new energy, new love, new versions of yourself that don't need permission to grow. You've been occupied by a past that doesn't serve you anymore. Now you are free to redesign your soul from the inside out. And if a memory tries to pull you back, don't shame yourself. Smile gently and say, I've already let that go. Not with bitterness, but with certainty, because you're no longer the person who needs that chapter to be rewritten. You're the person who's writing a new one. Some people will never know the power they had in your life, and that's okay. They don't need to. What matters is that you now know the power you're reclaiming. You now see that connection is not love if it only drains you, that longing is not the same as alignment, and that peace is a more worthy pursuit than closure. So create your ritual, make it yours. Whether it's writing a letter you'll never send, deleting the photos, taking a long walk where you whisper your goodbye to the wind, whatever it looks like for you, honor it, because you are not walking away from love. You're walking back to yourself, and that's the most powerful return of all. There's a moment in every healing journey when you're no longer just trying to forget them. You're trying to remember you. Not just who you were before the relationship, but who you've become because of it. Stronger, wiser, clearer, that's the moment when the door to a new standard of love slowly begins to open, but it doesn't swing wide on its own. You have to choose to walk through it, because the truth is, your heart has spent a lot of time settling. Not out of weakness, but out of hope, out of love, out of believing that if you just gave a little more, waited a little longer, stayed a little quieter, they would finally show up the way you needed. You told yourself that what you had was enough even when it wasn't. You normalized inconsistency, you romanticized potential, you tolerated silence when your soul was screaming for connection. And now, on the other side of all that, you get to decide, do I repeat the pattern or do I rise above it? Rising doesn't mean rejecting love, it means redefining it. It means walking into relationships not with desperation to be chosen, but with clarity about what you now refuse to live without. It means no longer begging for the bare minimum and calling it affection. No longer staying in places where your softness is treated like weakness. No longer giving your all to people who give you half. And that starts with understanding what real love actually feels like. Real love doesn't leave you confused. It doesn't give one day and disappear the next. It doesn't make you feel like you're too much for asking to be seen. It doesn't punish your vulnerability or make you chase it for reassurance. Real love is consistent, it's emotionally available, it shows up, not perfectly, but honestly. Real love makes you feel safe in your own skin. Not judged, not small, not silenced, but you only attract that kind of love when you believe you're worthy of it. That's the hard part, because maybe your past has taught you otherwise. Maybe people have mirrored back to you a version of love that was transactional, conditional, performance-based. Maybe you learned to equate love with proving your worth. But you're not here to keep repeating those lessons. You're here to heal them. So you have to start showing yourself the kind of love you want to receive. That means boundaries, not just for others, but for yourself. It means not texting someone just because you're lonely. It means not saying yes when your gut says no. It means not letting the memory of someone who hurt you determine what you allow into your future. You set the standard now, not your fears, not your past. You let this be the season where your healing becomes louder than your hurt. Let it be the season where your wholeness is no longer dependent on anyone else's presence or absence. Because when you stop needing someone else to validate your worth, you create space for someone who simply reflects it. And yes, that may mean you're alone for a little while, but solitude isn't punishment, it's preparation. It's the sacred time when you recalibrate your standards, when you unlearn the patterns that taught you to stay small, when you stop asking, will they love me, and start asking, will I love myself enough to walk away if they don't? You're not rebuilding just to get love again. You're rebuilding so you'll never lose yourself in love again. So ask yourself, what do I now require in love? And don't answer with a list of surface-level traits. Go deeper. Require someone who can hold space for your truth. Someone who listens when you speak, not just hears but feels you. Require someone who doesn't shrink in the face of your strength, your softness, or your story. Someone who doesn't make you fight for clarity or compete for attention or prove why you're enough. And then be that person for yourself every time you choose peace over chaos, every time you hold your boundary even when it's hard. Every time you walk away from a connection that doesn't align with your healing, you are opening the door to a new standard of love. This kind of love doesn't come as fast. It doesn't always look like the movies. It's slower, more intentional, but it's also safer, healthier, more expansive. It's the kind of love that doesn't just want you. It respects you. It nourishes you, it grows with you, and when it finally arrives, it won't feel like winning someone over. It'll feel like coming home to someone who already knows your worth,